Google faces being taxed millions of pounds for failing to tackle terror online. Security Minister Ben Wallace accused the world's biggest web firms of being far too slow to remove jihadi content and warned that the time for excuses is at an end. He threatened to force an extremism tax on firms like Google, Facebook and YouTube unless they do more to combat online extremism. Mr. Wallace said tech giants had become ruthless profiteers while hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' cash was being spent de-radicalizing Brits who could launch an attack. Mr. Wallace said, because content is not taken down as quickly as they could do, we're having to de-radicalize people who have been radicalized. That's costing millions. They can't get away with that and we should look at all the options, including tax. He said the refusal of messaging services like WhatsApp, which is owned by Facebook, to give MI5 access to message data was turning the internet into an anarchic violent space. He added, because of encryption and because of radicalization, the cost of that is heaped on law enforcement agencies. Britain suffered a series of attacks by terror-crazed jihadis between March and June last year that killed a total of 36 people. 2 involved vehicles ramming people on bridges in London, followed by attackers stabbing people. The deadliest, a bombing at a Manchester concert, killed 22 people. Following the second bridge attack, Theresa May proposed beefing up regulations on cyberspace. Weeks later Amber Rudd traveled to the US to urge tech firms to step up efforts against extremism. But Mr. Wallace warned the time for excuses is at an end and the government should look at all options of incentivizing firms, including tax. He added, if they continue to be less than cooperative, we should look at things like tax as a way of incentivis and shy, in them or compen and shy, sating for their inaction. We should stop pretending that because they sit on bin bags in t-shirts they are not ruthless profiteers. They will ruthlessly sell our details to loans and soft porn companies but not give it to our democratically elected government. Mr. Wallace said that reliance on the internet made Britain vulnerable to terrorists and rogue states. He added, that's what keeps me awake at night. We are more vulnerable than at any point in the last 100 years. Tech companies have made life too easy for attackers by refusing to take down extremist material and bomb-making guides, he said. He added, I have to have more human surveillance. It's costing hundreds of millions of pounds. An extremism tax would be similar to the windfall tax imposed on excess profits of privatized utilities by the Blair government in 1997. Or the levy Margaret Thatcher's government placed on banks in 1981. While internet companies have taken steps to tackle child abuse online, they don't seem to be making the same effort against extremism, Mr. Wallace said. His warning came after a parliamentary inquiry into fake news slammed Twitter and Facebook for failing to properly act against Russian attempts to influence British politics. Tory MP Damian Collins, chair of the House of Commons Digital, Culture, Media, and Sport Select Committee, said Facebook had appeared to have done no work to fully root out accounts that could be linked to Russian-backed agencies during the EU referendum. Meanwhile, Twitter was condemned by the committee for a completely inadequate response to the investigation. Senior executives from Twitter, Facebook, and Google, which owns YouTube, were accused of profiting from violence and criticized for failing to remove offensive content when they appeared before MPs in December. Yvette Cooper, chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, urged the companies to accelerate efforts to tackle hate crime after a number of MPs were subject to abuse online. Labour has suggested social media companies should face punitive fines for failing to react quickly to offensive material that incites hatred and violence. In June, Facebook, Microsoft, YouTube and Twitter formed the Global Internet Forum to counter terrorism to address the critical challenge posed by the spread of terrorism online. Google has announced it will significantly increase the number of staff tracking down extremist, violent and predatory content posted on YouTube to more than 10,000 in 2018. Facebook said Mr. Wallace was wrong to say it put profits before safety. YouTube said violent extremism was a complex problem and addressing it was a critical challenge for us all. And Dr. Shiraz Mar, from the International Centre for the Study of Radicalisation at King's College London, said, mobilization to terrorism still involves real life, real-world contacts, so governments can solely blame tech companies. Also, there is no easy fix, because what constitutes extremist material is subjective.